Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. So today's video is going to be a little bit more special. It's not like a regular series. And in this video, I'm going to talk about the combat animation for Langrisser, because this is a topic that I've always had a lot of questions about, but I didn't really have anywhere to get my answers from. So the reason why I'm making this video is because I came across these two videos while I was researching for something else. And you can see the total of these two videos, like 6 hours. And it's very good videos, and I'm making this video to kind of translate and summarize the main points that I find in these videos, because I try to look up on YouTube and I don't think anyone else has actually talked about animation in this level of detail. So the original videos are long, but that's also because he goes into a lot more examples and he does a lot more demonstrations than I'm going to. So I'm trying to keep this as short as possible, but I don't know if I can keep it under an hour. But if you understand Chinese and do actually want to understand more, I recommend you check the original videos out. I'll put it in the description. But with that being said, let's begin. So first up, I got a bunch of terminology here. You can see on the screen, and if you plan to access the database, which is where we'll get the data from, I recommend you screenshot this and keep it somewhere when you are looking up the app. As for the app itself, yeah, I'm gonna bring up a separate video to teach you how to get it. So this is basically how you get the database. You have to have a fucking WeChat account, unfortunately. And for PC, you will go here and you just type Mengzang. Like, you can just spell it out. No, yeah, it's Mengzang. You can just spell it, and I think it should come up. Mini programs. Yeah, this one, Mengzang Suchi Ku. You go here, and it just opens a new windows and you get to see all this shit. And for purposes of this video, of course it has a lot of things, but for purpose of this video, basically for heroes you go here, and then you can kind of sort by like the group of heroes. Like this is Langrisser 1 to 5, and down here there's mostly like collab stuff. And you can just go here, click here, and for this video, like if you want to look at the classes, you can come here, you click on the class itself, and then you look at, this is basically the short range animation and this is long range animation. And for the skills is simpler. You can just click on this, that's a passive. Okay, whatever, oh my god, this skill. Then you just go all the way down here, and yeah, these will be basically the things that we are looking at. And as for troops, unfortunately, if you don't read Chinese, you basically cannot navigate this shit because there's no pictures. So yeah, but if you do, you just click inside, and then you will see the melee and range animation as well. So yeah, that's it for this app. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's begin the actual content. So to start off, to understand attack animations, we have to understand that there are 3 primary types of attack animations. So right now we're gonna be limiting ourselves to basic attack and troops for simplicity purposes. So the first one is going to be like throwing animation, where your unit just stands there and throws something towards the other side. Even things like shockwave will be considered a throwing skill. So you just imagine yourself throwing something different. And the second one will be slashing, which is mostly infantry troops and flyer troops, where they will kind of run into the center and then they will attack whatever they meet or whatever they target with 2 slashes. And then charging will mostly be referring to cavalry heroes and troops. So basically how you determine which type of attack it is, for most things you can kind of tell on the database by their attack distance. So for throwing animations, they will usually have attack distance of 1200, which means that they don't move, they kind of just stand where they are and then they do their thing. For troops, they will do 2 hits of 1 tick damage each. So for like, bandits, assassin troops, they will throw 2 knives and each knife will do 1 tick of damage. As for heroes, they will do 1 hit of 20 ticks of damage. So like TJs will throw 1 fireball and that fireball can do up to 20 ticks of damage. And this throwing type will actually be the majority of animations in the game. Second one is slashing. Like I mentioned, it's mostly flyer and infantry troops, and lancer heroes will do this animation as well, but they will have a slightly longer attack distance. It's like 130 or something if I remember correctly, and this is for melee only. As for the charging, their attack distance is even shorter on the app at least, and they do 1 hit of 2 ticks of damage each. So they basically run at you, and the moment the computer considers a collision, you will immediately take 2 ticks of damage. And this is also melee as well. For range, they will actually do a throwing animation. So there are 2 more attack animations that are kind of unique. The first one is Juggler with his water balloon. He kind of just stands there and shoots 6 balloons, and they will each only do 1 tick of damage. This is why Juggler's damage is really bad against things with troops, because the troop will soak up the full damage take, even though the total damage might be the same against like some other hero. And flyer heroes, their normal attack is like a tornado, where they will shoot out 4 tornadoes that do 5 ticks of damage each. This is only for flyer heroes. One thing to note is that the normal attack animation is tied to their specific class and not their class type. So what do I mean by that? Most people should know this already, but here I have 2 examples. First one is Archon, who is an aquatic hero, but his normal attack is actually an infantry shockwave. So like it's not the same as Juggler's water balloon. So he does like a slash, you can see that orange color thing, that's the shockwave. And for Rosalia, even though you run her in holy class, she will not do a holy animation like beam or anything, she still runs forward like any other cavalry class. And as a bonus, when I took this screenshot, I didn't do this intentionally, but you can see I circled this. Archon actually has a smiling animation expression going on, and this is actually the kill expression, which means that Archon already knows that this is a successful kill even though the enemy hero still has full health. So this is a little bit of a teaser for when we go into damage calculation later on. So second thing is attacks will default to range when targeting flying units, even in melee. So what do I mean by that? So things like sorcerers, mostly mages I guess, sorcerers, fairies, even though you are fighting in melee distance. So what I did here is I literally just used TGS to melee the infantry mob, and you can see at the top the guardian infantries are throwing their swords towards my fairies, whereas when I'm running dark elf snipers, their infantries actually run in to attack my dark elves. So this is the so-called slashing animation. I don't even know what I call it, charging, slashing. Yeah, slashing. Whereas when they are fighting flying units, they will throw their knives or swords, whatever. So there's also a very specific bug regarding cavalry troops, but in order to understand this further, we need to come back to this later. So yeah, I post the link for this forum post as well, but it's in Chinese, so yeah. So okay, moving forward with attack animation. So these are basically the 3 main parts of an attack animation. So the first part would be the animation of the attack being released, and then there will be a travel time before the damage actually registers. So for the purpose of this video right now, we'll be focusing more on the release animation. The attack travel, okay, you can think of it like this. Let's use mage as an example. So the attack being released is the entire process from the start of the battle until the fireball leaves the mage's hand, and then the fireball has to travel across to the other side of the screen before it hits the enemy unit, and that would be the travel time or projectile speed, whatever you want to call it. And then the damage register is when you see the numbers pop up on the screen. You can see that the numbers don't actually pop up all at the same time. There's a minor delay between each damage tick, and this is basically depends on what you want to call it. Could be like damage delay or whatever. But yeah, basically that's the third part. And right now we are looking at the first part. So the release animation can be split into these 4 components based on the database. There's a delay, possibly a delay, not guaranteed. There will be a channel, then there will be a cast time before the release time. Okay, so I completely missed this part while I was recording the entire video, and this is basically just to showcase like the different phases of the release animation. So you can see right now on the screen, you can see under TJS, there's this hectogram or whatever you call this shit, that circle. This is basically the channeling time. So like from where your hero doesn't move until this blue circle comes out, so there is a delay. There's a possible delay before this, and once this blue circle comes out, this is the channeling time. Then once your hero has finished channeling, you can see this blue ball. The moment this blue ball appears and until your skill gets cast is basically the cast time or cast delay. Here now Holy Light comes out, and when this cutscene is playing, you can see that the troops don't actually move. All the projectiles, basically the battle is paused. This is purely visual. And then from here, the animation resumes. But the attack is not completed. It still takes a little bit of time before the Holy Light gets thrown out. And basically this period of time is the release delay or release time. So yeah, that's actually it. Using this as an example, this is just a screenshot from the app. The first one would be the cast time. The second number is the delay. Third number is the release time. And then I circled this 30. This is the attack interval. So the damage will be delivered in intervals of 30. I'm pretty sure this is milliseconds, but like unless they invented their own unit of time, which I don't know about. But yeah, this 30 milliseconds, you will see one number pop up. So basically, we can count that there is 0 delay plus 500 channeling time. This 300 cast time is not included in this screenshot, and they don't explicitly write 300, but basically if you are using a skill, it will be 300. If you are using a normal attack, it will be 0, and troops don't have this. So in this case, if you are using a skill, it will be 0 plus 500 plus 300 and then plus 500 on the release time, for a total of 1300 milliseconds before it is considered successfully cast. And then after that, it will take another, after the travel time, which this is the travel time, but based on the original creator, this shit isn't accurate, so you know, don't bother with it. And then after it travels across the screen, it will take a full 0.6 seconds for your damage to fully register. So going back to this is actually mostly just for understanding, because it's a little bit ambiguous, especially for the melee damage animations. So this is an important concept to know at what point is an attack considered successful. So it is not actually when the damage comes out. It's actually when your damage, when your attack is considered released. So for mages, you can imagine it, not really mages, pretty much anything. You can consider it as released when the projectile kind of appears on the screen. It could be before that. Like there's a specific frame of the animation where it would consider as launched. Whereas for slashing, it's kind of hard to tell and almost impossible to test. You pretty much need to like get multiple recordings and you analyze frame by frame at which point does your damage will your damage be considered delivered when you die after it. And that's kind of impossible to test right now. Like, it's possible, you might need like hundreds of recordings and scenarios. And similarly for charging animation, because I've seen an example of this where let's say Leon using 1000 hooves or whatever, he starts charging at the enemy, but before he actually touches anything, they actually start taking damage. So the animation is kind of just visual in regards to charging. So especially for slashing and charging, the animation is not very useful in a sense. So yeah, this is just to highlight the concept of an attack being successful. It is not when damage is being dealt, it is when the attack is successfully released. So this is I'm just putting up the example for troops. The top part, which I highlighted, is basically the attack distance, the damage takes, and number of attacks. So on the left, we have infantry troops in melee. You can see there is 40 attack range, which means that they will run in front. They will do 2 hits of 1 tick each of damage. And as for assassins, they kind of do the same animation whether they're range or melee. They will stand where they are, they will throw 2 knives for 1 tick of damage each. I dashed out the delay because the delay doesn't apply to troops, there's something else there. And then there is a cast time in the case of the range animation, and there's apparently 0 cast time for the melee animation, which is weird, right? Because it takes time for him to swing the sword. There is a travel time for infantry, which is weird. I guess it could possibly mean the animation, like it takes for him to swing the sword. And then there's a damage interval as well for infantry troops, which makes no sense because each hit only does 1 tick. So for that reason, like this travel time and damage interval is actually not accurate. Like they've already done testing and this is basically kind of whatever. Just take it with a pinch of salt. And it's the same for assassin troops. There's no damage interval for this and a travel time of 420, which is not accurate as well. So for troops, you mostly need to look at this travel 放时间, which is a release time. Yeah. This is also just for your information. This is based on data compiled by the original creator. This is for the travel time for each specific archetype. So you can see it is either from A or B to C or D. And this is only the travel time. So this is not including any type of delay or skill cast time. Yeah, that's not included in this. And you might find it weird, like why does the cavalry troops and heroes take longer time to reach than something like infantry? See, 1300, 1200, 1100. Well, the reason for that is because cavalry troops will usually run like to the very end of the screen, even beyond their hero, before making the trip back. Whereas infantry and lancers, they will kind of run in front of whatever they're trying to hit before they do their attack. And this is very hard to test. I guess this is tested against when they only have a hero. But in a real scenario with 20 troops fighting 20 troops, your troops will mostly be somewhere in the middle of the map, and it's more or less impossible to time that. And you can see here that cavalry skills actually have very fast travel time. They just zoom across the screen. So yeah, this is mostly just for your information. You can't really use this in calculations, unfortunately. Lastly, another example. This is just so that it's easier for you guys to visualize if you can't read Chinese. This is the delay, this is the channeling, I call it Chan here. Cast time is 300 if you're using a skill and 0 otherwise, and this will be the release delay, release time, whatever. Projectile time is not accurate, and this is the damage interval. So without going into without bringing up the data sheet for each of the attack animation types, this is a table of the total release speed for the normal attack for each hero class. Not really each, but basically their archetypes. The first attack type is literally called Yusuke. Yusuke has a very unique attack animation with a total release speed of 0. I have no idea why they came up with this shit for only one hero specifically. But basically what this means is that you will always take counter if Yusuke counters you when you attack him. Whether you you don't take damage immediately because he shoots like a hand beam kind of thing, and that beam does take time to travel. So you won't literally get countered to death before moving. That beam still takes some time to move, but you cannot dodge that beam. He will always release it no matter what. And then after Yusuke, we have Assassin and Infantry hero with a release speed of 1000 ms. So Assassins will be faster because they literally just jump across the screen and hit you. They have 0 travel time. Whereas Infantry, they will release some kind of ground shock wave, which does take time to travel across the screen. Then following that, we have certain holy classes like Templar Ladin and range cavalry and lancer heroes. They will take roughly 1200 ms to release their attack. followed by some holy units, which some of them will have a light beam, some of them will have a light ball, something like that, at 1300 ms. Finally followed by archers and the rest of the mages at 1500. So they have the slowest range animation, so-called. I put in Cav melee and Lancer melee here, but this is mostly just based off the data here and after adding like the hero delay and whatnot. So it's not really the most accurate, but if you think about it, sometimes you will run into scenarios or have run into scenarios where your cavalry hero hits something and you die without doing damage, because your cavalry will take quite an amount of time before he actually reaches the enemy hero. And most heroes will be able to release their attack before 1600. Whether they kill you before that is another question, but they will manage to release their attack. Whereas for Lancer melee, the Lancer moves so slowly that you pretty much will never run into a scenario where your Lancer hero is ahead of your troops and you die as a result of that. And that checks out, like at the longest time required for the Lancer hero to attack. So first up, we have a case study. So this is purely just imaginary. I don't have a recording for this because it's kind of hard to fine-tune the amount of attack on the assassin. So let's say it's Zerida as an example for the assassin. So based on these numbers, you can see that the puppet will take 1300 ms before it is considered his attack to be released. Call it his, whatever, its attack to be released, 1300. Whereas for the assassin, it will take 100 ms for the attack to be released. And there's 0 travel time for the assassin. So by doing the math, we can see that there is a gap of 300 ms between their attacks. And the assassin will be able to land roughly 10 attacks in that 300 ms, because each damage interval will take 30 milliseconds. And so for the puppet to be able to do counter damage to the assassin, your puppet has to be able to tank more than 10 attacks and more than 11 to be safe, because apparently there might be a minor differential. Sometimes it will take 20 milliseconds or something, but this is not very certain. So it's more than 11 if you want to be safe. If you can tank these more than 11 attacks, you will be able to launch your attack and do damage to the enemy assassin. So this is for a scenario, let's say your Zerida has like 1000 health and you're attacking a full HP puppet. Or the other way around, you're using a full HP puppet to attack a 10% HP Zerida or 1k HP. So whether you die without doing any damage or you both die will be dependent on how many attacks you can tank. If you can tank more than 11, you both die. Because when the attack is launched, it will be considered like you will do full 20 ticks of damage from assassin. So even if you can tank the first 11 and you kill the Zerida, you will take the remaining 9 afterwards. Not to mention that the beam still has a travel time, which means that it's impossible for you to kill Zerida before Zerida kills you, but it is possible for you to get your attack out to counter kill the Zerida. Yeah, otherwise the assassin takes 0% counter. So yeah, this is purely just to kind of visualize how the release speed ties into the damage interval. Okay, so with normal attacks out of the way, let's talk about hero skills. So for assassin skills, I'm mostly going to be using assassin skills for example. Like I'm not going to talk about like all the skill archetypes. That's actually in the original video if you want to check that out. I will mostly be focusing on assassin skills for my examples. So first up, we use Zerida, traditional assassin, the oldest one, as an example. And we can see that Killing Blow is it has a 600 ms release speed, whereas Shadow Raid has a 700 ms release speed. So most generic assassin skills are actually at 700 ms. Certain 3Cs will be faster than that at 600, and then there are some that are even faster than that. And so here is a quiz. So based on that data, so which do you think is faster, whether Shadow Raid from a hero or the bandit troops that they brought along? So here's a screenshot that I tested, and you can see from this screenshot that Zerida's attack has pretty much landed. Like Zerida has already returned to a position after dashing out from the Shadow Raid, and the enemy has started taking damage. Whereas for the bandits, their knives are still barely going across the screen. Like not many of them have even finished throwing out their knives. So from this screenshot, you can kind of tell it's pretty easy. The shadow rate is faster. And if you answered that, congratulations, you're wrong. Well, not wrong exactly, because it's kind of a trick question and I intentionally worded it to be a bit ambiguous. So if I bring up the Bandit's release speed and put it side by side, you will see that Bandits actually have a faster release speed. And I actually brought this up like a couple of slides ago, which is here. You can see 420 release speed. And most range attacks will have this 420 release speed. So why does it matter? So even though I say that Bandits are faster, you can see obviously here that shadow rate connected first. So, taking into account into travel time, they actually do their damage later than shadow rate. But the important thing to note here is that the timing where an attack is released is actually very important in Langrisser's calculation for damage, and it's important to note this distinction. So an attack is considered launched when it is released. Okay, the wording for that is a little bit weird, but it will make sense later when we talk about damage calculation. So the important timing is when it is launched, not when the damage connects. For Kyra, I bring up all three of her skills here, her main skills. You can see that Star Slash and Magic Shine have a ridiculous release speed of 300 ms. It's like literally fastest in the game. There's zero delay, zero channeling, zero release time. There's only the 300 cast, which is compulsory for every single skill in the game. And when you look at Star Sword, it's actually quite significantly slower. It has a channel and release time. And honestly, with this channel time, it is more similar to like a Holy or Monk skill than an Assassin skill. Because if you look at Zerida, all of them have zero channeling. Even her normal attack has zero channeling. Whereas Star Sword actually has a channel. So yeah, it's 300, 300 and 1000. Finally, for a third example, I didn't want to waste time on this, but I decided to bring it up because the data on shadow rate is actually wrong on the database. On the database, it says that there's a total release speed of 1800, which is just wrong, because anyone that has played Sigma will know that Sigma can pretty much kill mages without taking any counter damage. But based on what we know so far, if Shadow Duel, typo, if Shadow Duel has a release speed of 1800, that means every hero in the game pretty much will be able to release a counter before the Shadow Duel starts doing damage. Well, even though it's slow, so-called faster than Lancer, this is including the movement speed. If you jump to the Lancer, he doesn't need to move and he just stabs at you. So every hero in the game will be able to counter that, which is false. So based on that, we are able to estimate that the release speed of Shadow Duel is actually closer to something like 980. And the reason for that is because this test was done in the other video, the original video, and it's blur, but you can see that Shadow Duel actually does the first tick of damage to the Zerida before Zerida does the first tick of counter damage to Sigma. So in the next frame, they both start taking damage, but you can see the first tick is actually done by Sigma. So Sigma is actually very, very, very slightly faster than Assassin's normal attack counter. So it's roughly around here if you take into account of the damage interval to be like 990 or 980, it's roughly around there. So a little bit of homework for you guys that are planning to actually check out the app or database or whatever. So this is a very like old school example, like season 1. So if you've played in season 1, you would probably know that for Claret to attack Zerida, you should use Raw and not. I don't even know what this skill is called anymore, like Lightning Storm, Raging Thunder. No, it's not Raging Thunder, that's Cherry's 3C. I don't know what this skill is called, but basically you use the red skill, not the blue skill. And we know that that is the case, but we don't know why. The most we can say is because this skill is slower. So, if you're gonna check out the app, you should check out the data on these two skills and compare them to each other. And, you can start making sense of the data with regards to the counter timing for Zerida and her troops. There's another example that you should look up as well if you plan to. Is Lucretia's Dark Reaper and 3C. There's actually quite a big difference between these two skills in relation to their consistency in collecting kills. But to figure out the reason for the difference in consistency, you will need to wait until the end of this video because it's related to the damage calculation. But first, you should check out the numbers between these two skills. Okay, so before we get into the main topic, after so long, we haven't even gone into the main topic yet. We have to talk a little bit more about troop animation. So basically, this is the cycle for troop animation for most of them at least, because most troops will have to do 2 attacks which do 1 tick of damage each. First up, there is a random delay. That's right, hence the topic of this, the title of this video. There is a fucking random delay before the troops start moving. And then they will move if it's applicable, so for like cavalries or infantries, then they will move. They will acquire their target. So right now this doesn't make much sense yet, but just bear with me. They will select their target. And actually for this example, let's just imagine it as a ranged troop. It's easier to explain that way because, like I said, infantry and cavalry, their animation is very ambiguous. You don't know which specific frame is which phase. So right now let's imagine with a ranged troop with bandits. So this target selection will happen before the animation. So before the bandit even moves a single pixel, before he starts to raise his hand and throw his knife, the bandit will have already selected his target to throw his knife at. Then after the animation finishes, he will throw the knife, the attack will launch, and then there is a backswing, which is the finishing animation or ending animation. So like after he throws it out, he has to pull his hand back, right, to get his next knife. So that will be the backswing. And then there is a second random delay, and then the cycle repeats for the second attack. So that is basically how troop animation works. So pay attention to the target selection. It will be important in the next part. And the proof of that is actually in another Chinese forum post. This is actually very long ago, where the user basically tried to do the same attack over and over again, and he realizes that the scorpions actually move differently in each scenario. Like you can see in the bottom screen, motherfucker, the rest of the scorpions have already started fighting and he's still chilling at spawn. Like this guy came to work hungover. So actually, when I was making this, I thought back to when I was doing PvE. So some of you will be familiar with this thing where, like, if you fail a kill, you will try to clock back and do things in a different order to try and achieve a different result. And if you do the same sequence of actions, you will actually get the exact same result. So what this means is that it's not fully random. If you clock back and you do the same sequence of actions, you might just get the same animation again. So there is some kind of seeded pseudo-random thingy that determines all of these. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. It's not true random, but it's based on some kind of seed apparently. But yeah, this is basically proof that there is a random delay before the troop animation. So yeah, I'm circling this because again, for the slashing and charging animations for troops, it's actually very ambiguous. You don't really know at what point of the movement or the animation does the target selection occurs, like which part of when he raises his sword, or which part when you collide with the enemy, like which frame is the target selection. It's very unclear. So for the purposes of this video, we will mostly use our examples with range animation. So yeah, the main topic, damage calculation. So first up, we have to understand that in Langrisser, there are 2 types of skills, targeted and non-targeted. Most skills in the game will actually fall into targeted, or at least most skills in PvP, because like I didn't test every single skill in PvE. So most PvP skills will actually fall in targeted. And what does this mean? So we are focusing on targeted skills first. So these 3 things. First up, they will already have decided on a target upon casting that skill. Like it's upon finishing their casting. They will already decide on what target they want to hit, which troop, whether you hit the hero or not. All of this will already be decided upon casting before the attack lands. And they can only target the enemy hero if all the enemy troops are considered to be dead. So we'll get to that in a bit. And even though visually it might imply otherwise, you can actually skip the troops even though it looks like a projectile that passes through. So like I said, it's targeted. The targets have already been predetermined upon throwing out that skill. That's why it will bypass anything that it considers to already be dead. It's literally omae wa mo shinderu. So to give a little bit of a visual example before we get into the actual recordings, let's say your Kyra is trying to hit an Ares. So I'm gonna make some of these calculations a little bit more convenient. Let's say that, okay, I need to zoom out for this. Let's say that each faceless troop will need to do 2 ticks of damage to kill 1 angel to make our calculation a little bit simpler. So let's say 3 of these faceless start their animation before Kyra finishes her 300 millisecond cast, like very fast. Let's say 3 of them successfully begin their animation before it's cast. So that means they target these 2 angels, and this angel is dead. So this angel only took some damage because you need 2 hits to kill it, and there's only 3 of them that moved. So the moment they move, they already send their data to the hive mind. So everyone here is connected to the hive mind. So basically what they're saying is, yo, this angel is already dead. Please go hit something else. Whereas this guy is still alive because it's not enough damage to kill him or her, whatever. So at this point, Kyra launches her attack, her 3C or whatever, and she looks at the hive mind and she knows that this angel is already dead. So Kyra's attack will actually target the remaining 9 angels. Whatever, I highlighted the Ares, the 9 angels. So if there are remaining attacks, so for convenience purposes, let's say yes, there are remaining damage ticks left. If she manages to kill off all the troops, the remaining damage will go onto Ares' main hero. And at this point, after she launched the attack, before it lands, some of the remaining, whatever, I can't highlight their faceless. So let's say these 3 move immediately after Kyra casts a skill. So at that point, they access the hive mind and they will know that Kyra has successfully defeated these 9 angels. So what do? Their attacks will be targeted at Ares, and every subsequent attack from the faceless will be targeting Ares. So what this means is that the attack is, in terms of calculation in the computer, the attack is considered to have already landed upon casting, even though the damage hasn't actually happened. The damage landing is purely visual in this case, and this is for targeted skills. And it's a lot easier to illustrate this with ranged troops, because melee troops, it's literally a clusterfuck, right? They're gonna run across the screen, especially if they are fighting grounded troops. And with that, let's go into the case study. So let me just bring this up. Sorry for the HD, because this is literally a zoomed in of my video editor. I don't really have a way to get it otherwise. So we're gonna have to look at some things frame by frame. So in this scenario, I'm using my Kyra to hit an enemy bowser with my 2-cost skill. So okay, here I put a Hilda because I didn't want her to crit on this attack. Let me just move it a little bit. You gotta attack down as well. No, that's Hilda's aura. So I'm sorry that there's an invite there. I forgot to click on it when I was recording. So you can see, right? This is the cast, and this is when the skill is starting to cast. This is basically the cutscene or animation or whatever. So before this, if you go frame by frame, you can actually see some of the facelesses. Some of the troops have started moving. Like very obviously, these 2, the one at the back and the one here, have moved. And you can also see that some other troops will start moving as well. You can see this guy here, his hand is moving a little bit. And this guy here as well, his hand is moving a little bit. So like that little movement means that they have already selected their target. Actually, this guy at the back, I think. This guy, I'm not sure if you guys can even see it properly. He's actually started moving as well. You can see his hand is moving that tiny little bit. Let's see which frame. It's very minor, but you can see after, let me just show you after the cutscene. You can see like he's actually moving already, this guy. This guy has already moved before the animation starts. And when Kyra launches her attack, you can see roughly around here is when Bowser starts taking damage on the hero. And so far, all these red numbers, these are all from Kyra. The faceless attacks haven't connected yet. So we move forward a little bit, and we can see the knives are starting to come over. 1 damage tick, 592. 2 ticks. 3 ticks. 4 ticks. And 5 ticks. So that corresponds with the number of troops that are moving before she throws out her skill. 5 hits. And you can see the remaining hits, they are all going towards Bozo. Not a single drop wasted. So after Kyra throws out her skill, even though it doesn't connect immediately, or like Bowser, or like the, even though the troops haven't actually died, the other troops will already know that they are dead, and they just target Bowser immediately. Then now I have another example, exact same scenario with the same buffs and shit, but this time without Hilda, because I want to try to crit. Okay, let's go to before the cutscene. Let's see how many of them are moving. So 1, this guy, the obvious one. 2. These 2 guys that are kind of in front, their hands are also kind of moving pretty obviously. See their left hand actually moving. This one guy at the back that's already pretty much throwing out the knife. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There is one more. Let me see, because I literally titled this off. This guy, I don't know if you can see it, like his hand is moving, like his right hand is moving a little bit. Like this guy at the back. Maybe if I move the animation a little bit more. Like you can see, right, his hand is moving up very, very slightly. Yeah. So 6 troops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 hits from the troops have successfully been launched before Kyra. Here you can see, yeah, you can even see a crit here from Kyra. And up until the red number comes out. Wait, is that 800? No, that 800 is from the troops. So roughly at this, I mean, you can see the part where Bowser starts taking damage. It's around here. Yeah, after this hit, so we can just count, right? So after this hit is basically when Bowser starts taking damage. Then we look at the knives from the faceless. See, this time there are 3 troops left. In the previous recording, there were only 2. In this case, because the faceless crit, so the amount of damage they deal is different. Actually, wait a minute, no, that's not the correct line of thought. It's because there are 6 troops that hit this time, instead of 5. So they are able to successfully kill the 3rd troop, and Kyra can ignore it. You see 800, that's the first one, second one, 3rd one. That's 4th one already? No. Wait. It's easier to see if you look at the number here actually. It's here 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually can't even find the 4th one unless 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I don't know which one's new. Yeah, this one's new. 4, 5 down here, and then the last hit. Wait, did I go too fast? Yeah, 6. There's a number that's like here. 6. 6 hits from the faceless. And here you can, is this the replay? No, it's another replay. You can see the remaining of the knives are going straight towards Bowser as well. And finally, 3rd recording, I'm using the slower skill. I already forgot the name. It's this one. Star Sword. You can see this time literally like all of them have like started moving because this skill has a delay of 1000. So some of them might even begin their second attack before Kyra lands. Before Kyra finishes her release delay, because this skill has a release delay of like 200 or something. So you can see before the skill even comes out, like the animation will proceed on. This guy probably threw out his second one already, and now this projectile come out. So I don't know which exact frame is it considered release, but that is the projectile, and it's a little bit of a clusterfuck. You can't really see shit. So let's dial back and see at which point does Bowser start taking damage. So you can see some of these yellow numbers, actually these are from Kyra. Like Kyra's already doing damage before the knives have landed. So when this blue color comes out, you can see this damage. This is actually from Kyra, not the Faceless. So let's find the exact point where Bowser starts taking damage here. So here you can actually see this 592. This 592, like the previous recording, is actually from Faceless. You can see the damage is constant. It's the exact same scenario, same stats. So this is actually from the Faceless, so that's 1. This 721 is from Kyra towards his main hero. So Kyra did not crit Bowser's main body, and it does the effective damage because I'm on True Cross currently. And let's count the damage ticks. So 1 here, 2, 3. You can also roughly guess by how much the HP drops, although sometimes there is overkill damage, so sometimes it drops like 100. That's actually 1 hit as well. So there's 3 hits here, 4 hits, this 592, 5 down here, 592, 6, this one at the side here. Is that 6? 32 to 26. Yeah, that should be 6. Here is 7 and 8. You can see both these 592s the same size, and they're new. These 592. So that's fuck. I already lost count. Let's go back to the start. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 7, 8, 9. See this one down there? 9. 10. 11, 12. There's 2 new 592s here at the top. 11, 12. And finally the last hit, 13. So you can see with a slower skill, more of your troops will hit their troops, which means that your hero will hit their hero much more. And that is the main distinction between the relationship between having a fast or slow cast time. Well, I'm changing my terminology here a bit, but it's basically the release time. And as a bonus, you can see in this clip, you can see where my mouse is actually in the recording as well. You can see that there's this one knife here that is actually targeting the ground. It doesn't go towards Bowser. You should be able to see my cursor, right? I don't know because I'm recording. This one knife at the bottom here, it's actually hitting the ground. It's not hitting Bowser. So this is what we call damage loss. So there's 1 tick of damage loss here because it is targeting something that is already dead. More on that later. But basically the main takeaway from these 3 recordings is that if you want Kyra to hit the hero more and you want your troops to hit their troops more, you want to use a skill that is slower in terms of release speed. Let's keep it as release speed. But the thing is, usually there's not much of a choice, like you're not gonna bring a completely garbage skill in favor of a good skill just because the cast speed is slower. You're still gonna bring the other one. Like for example, I think Kyra gets Redemption. I think the one that looks like Discipline but heals a whole team. That skill has a release speed of 1600, which is very good if you're trying to hit something like Cherry Angels with Dark Elf Snipers. That will basically guarantee all your Dark Elves will target their Angels and you will hit Cherry's main body. But are you really gonna bring what's that called? Redemption when you can only hit from 2 range? It doesn't even benefit from Scepter. No, right? So this is more just like an informational thing, like how to break down these animations. And in some cases, you can make more informed decisions on the skill choices, but most of the time actually not really. And as a bonus, I'm gonna showcase this one. So I mentioned that it's very hard to see the exact frame where melee troops or infantry troops in this case will consider their attack as being launched. It is some point where they stop and swing their sword, and you can see when I melee with riposte on my Lost Ham, like most of them have started moving, some of them not even. Like you can see, literally like half the troops are still chilling in base. You can see my riposte is mostly connecting on their troops. So you can see like Lost Ham has already returned back. Like I don't know which of these numbers exactly are his. Probably this 668. 668, which means it's either a 2 or 3 hit KO on the Warlocks. And looking at this damage, it's probably 2. Like I don't know, it's already mixed in with some of the infantry. That's why it's very hard to analyze these kind of animations. But the main thing we notice here is that Lost Ham barely touched their hero. So even with a skill like Kyra, in Kyra's case, her 3C is faster with 300 release speed. Kyra actually manages to touch Bowser's hero a little bit because she's able to predetermine that some of the troops are dead. But Lost Ham cannot do that because by the time Lost Ham performs his attack, like the infantry troops have barely started fighting against the Crystal Warlock. So in Lost Ham's head, none of the troops are considered dead yet, or at the very least maybe like one of them is considered dead, and he has to go through the other 9 troops. Whereas for the infantry troops, you can actually see a nice bonus here, even though this is very blur. You can see that they started to throw knives at Bowser after the Warlocks are considered dead. So at the start of the attack, they are running across to melee the Crystal Warlocks. And then when the Crystal Warlocks die, Bowser is a flying hero, so they change modes and they start throwing their swords, knives, whatever, at Bowser. So this is pretty interesting. Like your attack animation can change halfway into an animation if your target changes from like a non-flying to flying or flying to non-flying. And okay, come back here. So now I want to go back to previous thing that I brought up. So this thing, like unicorns to basically some kind of flying troop and then a non-flying hero. So there's a bug in this case where cavalry troops can do 3 ticks of damage instead of the usual 2, and that is related to this animation. So normally you are expecting 20 hits out of 10 troops, right? But because the unicorns, their first target is the Steel Wing Warriors, so they will shoot their magic beam. I'm pretty sure they don't throw anything, it's a beam. They will shoot their beam, and then by the time they are ready to do their second attack, the Steel Wing Warriors have died. So suddenly their target will change to Oboro. And Oboro, let's just say he's a Lancer unit. I don't know if he flies in his dragon, I'm pretty sure he doesn't. But Oboro is a grounded unit. And then as a result, the unicorns will change to a charging animation. And from even further back, we know that the throwing animation will do 2 hits of 1 tick each. So before they are trying to do their second hit, they will switch over to charging to do their second hit. For a total of 1 plus 2 equals to 3 hits. So as a result, in this very niche scenario, you can have a damage, or it's not really damage overflow, but you are doing more damage than you're supposed to. because charging will always do 2 ticks of damage. And in this case, you will get like bonus damage. So I'm not sure how much of this can really apply to an actual scenario, but just for your information, it's out there. There is such a bug. And I don't think it's fixed yet because Zilong never fixes anything. Okay, going back to the main topic. So here. So there is a way to test like whether your skill is considered a targeted skill or not. So first up, you will need a cavalry hero. In this case, I use a Hilda. Make sure it's in cavalry class because you want her to run in front. And you will kind of nuke her troops by using this chaotic strategy skill from Florencia. And then this is like whatever skill you want to test. If it's a targeted skill, wait, no, why are both of these targeted? God damn it. This is non-targeted. If it's non-targeted, it will hit the Hilda that has run in front of her troops. And if it's targeted, your hero will ignore the Hilda that is in front of them, and they will just smack the troops that are kind of just chilling in place because of chaotic strategy. For the test to be consistent or so that it's easier to see, it's recommended for you to nuke your own troops with Angelica's skill, ready to go. And in the case where you are trying to test a flying unit, you will need an enemy Florencia to use chaotic strategy on you with a grounded troop, because otherwise Hilda will throw her spear as a range animation against flying units. So if you want her to run in front, you need another Florencia on their side to use chaotic strategy on yours. And I will demonstrate once on how this works with Elwin's 3C. Bring this up so you can see. Okay, so all of this is set up. I didn't use ready to go, I just used another Lucretia to hit my own Elwin. And this is basically the setup. So right now, I've already used chaotic strategy on the Hilda, and I'm trying to test Elwin's 3C. Can I move it in front a little bit? Yeah, okay, so here. See, my Elwin has no troops. The Hilda troops are disabled. And let's look at the animation. Nice breeze, by the way. God damn, this is taking a while. Okay, Eternal Glory, whatever. You can see this big ass sword. You can see Hilda is running ahead of her troops now due to chaotic strategy. Elwin swinging down his big sword. Does not give a fuck about Hilda. Look at this shit. Hilda's in front of him. But Elwin says, no, this sign can't stop me because I can't read. I'm fucking hitting the troops. Yeah, I mean Hilda does start taking damage in the end because he killed all the Templar Knights because this is not a Lancer troop. But yeah, this is basically how you test this shit. If your hero attacks their troops when Hilda is right in front, it means that it is a targeted skill. And why is that? Well, we have to go back to, you know, the 3 rules, right? 3 rules, which is that, god damn it. You can only target the enemy hero if all their troops are considered to be dead. In this case, their troops are very not dead. You don't have any troops at all. So Elwin has to chomp at their troops first before he can attack the enemy hero. This is why you cannot do the 3 movement sword thing on, like, let's say Landius with Lancer troops with his 3C. It's never going to work because Elwin's 3C is a targeted skill and sword is not. You can test that yourself, but you know, everyone knows that sword works against that shit. So yeah, that's kind of how you want to test it. I'm not sure if this works against every skill, because like there are some very fast and there are also some very slow skills, right? Which means that you might have already casted your skill before Hilda runs ahead of troops. So maybe for those skills it's a little bit harder to test. But in the case of very slow skills, it doesn't really matter, right? If you are using a very slow skill, what that means is that it's pretty much guaranteed for your troops to already finish their targeting before your hero even attacks. In that case, it doesn't matter, right? Like all your troops will do their full damage onto their troops, and then your hero will kind of finish off what's left. And this is just like a rough guesstimate in terms of the damage distribution. This is also done by the original creator. So you can see the release speed and the troop on troop hits. So for a skill with 300 release speed, so like Kyra, and also Epsilon's 3C by the way, if you didn't know already, your troop on troop hits will roughly be around 4, but their range can be around 2 to 8. You can see in the testing that I did against the Bowser, I had 5 to 6 hits launched by my Facelesses, which is actually a high roll. So if you want your hero to damage their troops more, you should pray for a lower number. If you want your hero to hit their hero more, you should pray for a higher number. Congrats, there's more praying to be done. For 700 to 800, which is roughly around Shadow Raid speed, you will get 10 to 20 hits from your troops onto their troops, normally around 12 hits. 10 is the minimum, and 20 is apparently possible, but you probably need to try a few times to try and get it. This is why for Shadow Raid, mostly your distribution is actually 10 from your troops, then 20 from your hero, and then 10 from your troops, which means that in cases like the Earth Elf Bandit, Earth Elf Knights from Cherry, even though you are fighting a werewolf unit, you will waste at least 10 hits from your troops to hit their werewolves, which will do very pitiful damage. And you will only have 10 hits left, roughly, from your troops that will hit their hero after your Cherry has finished killing their werewolves. Like let's say Werewolf Burn and Werewolf Wet Hand. You actually cannot make Cherry kill all the troops before the attack lands. That is not possible based on the mechanics. Then as you go down the release speed, like as it increases, your number of troop on troop hits will increase. So in most cases in the game, you will actually want your hero to hit their hero, because most of the time heroes will have higher stats, especially in C we just got casting, and then we are also gonna get more and more Ragnarok stats. So hero stats will scale more than troop stats down the line, because we are not getting any new Aniki percentage stat notes. So troops are kind of just stuck there. So usually you want to use your troop hits on their troop hits, unless there is some kind of type advantage going on. So moral of the story here is actually slower skills are better for one-hit KOs. Like ironically, even though most single target attackers that we are using nowadays are assassins with faster skill speeds. So with that out of the way, let's talk a little bit about damage loss. So this is kind of like a subsection of damage calculation. And damage loss, basically there are two types of damage loss. First one is if you die before your attack launches, and this is what we most commonly know as animation death. You die before your attack is launched, like an assassin killing a mage before the mage throws out a fireball, or a cavalry troop or hero dying in transit. So like they're attacked by a rage attack while they are running, and before they reach the enemy, they get hit by the attack and they die. And this means that you are doing less damage than expected based on the starting position. That sounds like chess. Based on like how many troops you have when you start the combat. So that is damage loss due to animation. The second one is damage loss due to a targeted unit having died to a different attack. So this is actually the example for the third Kyra replay that I showed. So let's go back to this thing. Can I backspace? Oh shit. Whatever. Okay, let's come back here. So what's happening here? Let's say a hypothetical scenario. 3 facelesses throw their weapon at this guy and this angel. This angel is dead, so let's look at it. So the remaining 1 faceless is targeting this angel. So for imaginary purposes, let's say Kyra is able to one-shot a single angel with 1 tick of damage due to a crit. Let's just say, well, that's not really happening unless you have a shit ton of damage increase. But let's just say Kyra, which normally has to deal the remainder amount of damage. Actually, not even. You don't even need to crit. Let's just say like Kyra is able to one-hit this troop. Like, even though Kyra is able to one-hit this troop has already finished his targeting. So his knife is basically in transit. But suddenly Kyra attack launches and Kyra's attack lands before the knife reaches. And all of them die. Because normally there's going to be an angel left, but Kyra has killed it off. So this knife will fall to the ground, which is what we saw in that replay earlier. You've basically lost 1 tick of damage. If you go and count it one by one, you will realize your hero has only done 39 ticks of damage in total. And that is for targeted skills. There's another example which is non-targeted skills. So we haven't really talked about non-targeted that much, but what non-targeted skill basically means is first come first serve. And you can think about it like they don't participate in the targeting meeting. Like, they don't care, they're not in the hive mind. They just throw out their attack, and whatever that attack touches will take damage. And once 20 ticks of damage has been dealt, the attack goes away. You can think about it like that. And what better example to bring up than old school Sonya 3C in ranged. So if you're a newer player, you probably won't be familiar with this hero at all, but this hero was played quite a fair bit, like literally 2+ years ago. And she was very infamous for having extremely terrible range damage when using Chaos Helix, even though it's a 2-range skill. So last time we just say, if you're gonna use that skill, always melee, never ranged. Range bad. And let's take a look at the numbers before we look at the recording. So Chaos Helix has a release speed of 1200 ms, whereas Bone Dinos in range, because of projectile, they will have a release speed of 420. So looking back at our little chart here, for an attack with 1200 release speed, you will roughly estimate around, let's say, 15 to 16 hits to connect, or not connect, to be targeted from your troops. So out of the 20 hits, 16 of those hits already have a target selected. And this is not including the travel time from Chaos Helix, because after releasing it, it still takes a little bit of time for it to travel across the screen. And Chaos Helix is a non-targeted skill, which means that Sonya does not participate in the hive mind. So the troops, the remaining troops, like the remaining 4 hits of the troops, will actually consider all the troops to be alive, even though Chaos Helix might kill off all the troops. And with that, before Chaos Helix lands, the remainder hits will be thrown out, targeted at the troops. And let's take a look at the recording for this. I had to re-gear my Sonya for this shit. My Sonya had a gear stolen already. You can see. Okay, let's go frame by frame. See, all these bone dinos and their bones, they've already started throwing it out. Chaos Helix gets cast. And boom, you can see this fucking spear of death going towards Juggler, killing all of the lobsters. Let's be honest here, 2.7k per hit on a lobster. All these lobsters and like their fathers or something is dead. 27, 27, 27, 27, blah 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 blah. So this is 1 tick per troop. So we can basically assume that without counting, that right now at this point 10 ticks of damage has been dealt. So the next number that pops up, 959. So 959 times 10, 9.5 divided by minus the actual HP. So without even looking at the end result, I'm guessing that this juggler will have 6.5k HP left. And you see these things? These bones? Damage loss. There's even one here. Damage loss, damage loss, damage loss, damage loss. Everything to the ground. Fucking Chukai Tanah, ground tax. So this is why you never range attack with Sonya, because Sonya is a non-targeted skill on the hero, but the troops are using a targeted mechanic. If they are both non-targeted, it's actually okay, which in this case is melee, because both the hero and the troops are operating on a first come first serve basis. Of course, like whether you want your hero to hit their troops or you want your hero to hit their hero, that's a different question. Like which one is better. But you will get your 40 ticks of damage. Whereas in this case, in the range animation, you might as well be attacking without your troops. The bone dinos are like, what the fuck? This is like me at my job. I do 3 days worth of work, and then the client comes to me and says that, yo, the requirements have been changed. Please change. That's my 3 days of work going on the floor. And it's very accurate. Like I literally guessed 6.5k HP left before I even saw it, because 9.5. I mean 959 per damage per tick. So this is actually 20 ticks of damage. Like maybe there's like, okay, let me do the math again. 959. You know what? Let me bring up a fucking calculator for this. 1611 minus 9590. It's 6521. It's 20 ticks. There's not a single hit of the bone dino left, which is very infuriating. But yeah, this is one of the more extreme examples of damage loss. Usually you see something along halfway, like you waste 10 hits or something like that from a non-targeted skill. So yeah. So I think that is it, right? Like, this is the final part of this video. Like right now, like it's just a conclusion left. So what do we take away from this video? So it's a lot, but at the same time not a lot. A lot in the sense in that you can now look at your replays and you can kind of estimate why something was a kill or not a kill, and you know, based on the skills like data, like how fast is the skill. And other than that, there's not a whole lot you can do to influence. Like maybe in this case, like you can know which skill to use on what target. You will know that using a flyer skill on an assassin in melee is a bad idea. And you can know like why these skills, like one skill is better than the other. I'm not telling you the answer. If you play PvP, you should know the answer to this, but not why. So that's up to you. But basically, you can kind of just make more informed decisions on like what skills to bring, and that's mostly about it. You actually can't do that much to influence the result of the damage calculation, because the speed of the skill is set in stone, right? You can choose to bring a different skill, but that's about it. Other than that, now you can look at your replays and your failed kills, and instead of just whining about breeze, tenure and defenders, now you can look at your animation frame by frame and complain that, hey, what the fuck, why does my Pepsi zombie only throw 2 axes before my attack launches? Fucking RNG shit game. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Hope you guys enjoyed and learned something. See you guys in the next video. Peace.